Good morning, everyone. The Committee on Executive Management, please come to order. I'd like to welcome Council Committee Vice Chair Say, Council Members Cordero, Kia Aina, and Wire. Also present is Council Member Tupola. Good morning. Do we have anybody appearing remotely, Mr. Clerk or Madam Clerk?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, thank you. Before we start our meeting, I have some procedural announcements to make. Pursuant to Section 92-3.7 Hawaii Revised Statutes, this meeting will be conducted as a remote meeting by interactive conference technology with the following procedures in effect for the meeting. Members of the public will be allowed to provide oral testimony on all items on the agenda in two ways, remotely and in person in the council chamber. Remote and in-person oral testimony will be allowed when each item is taken up. All persons who have registered to testify remotely by video conference will be called upon first. When your name is called, please monitor your screen and activate your audio feed when prompted. I will then give persons who have not registered an opportunity to offer testimony. Please utilize the raise hand feature in Zoom to be called. For those joining us by telephone only, please press *9 to indicate your desire to speak. I will identify you by the last 3 digits of your phone number. When your number is called, please press *6 to unmute yourself when prompted. Some friendly reminders and tips. Video conference from a quiet location if possible. If you are also watching the proceeding on Honolulu, please mute your television at the time you are called to testify. When the timer on the screen reaches 0, please conclude your remarks promptly. Once all the remote testifiers have testified, I'll proceed to in-person testimony in the council chamber. Persons who have not registered will be given an opportunity to speak following the oral testimonies of the registered speakers. HRS Section 92-3.7 requires all votes at remote meetings to be conducted by a roll call unless unanimous. Therefore, if any objections are noted, I will call for a roll call vote. For those council members participating from outside of the council chamber in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, the meeting will automatically recess if we lose audiovisual contact with you and cannot reconvene until we reestablish contact. Therefore, please announce beforehand if you'll be voluntarily signing out of the meeting. Written testimonies, including the testifier's address, email address, and phone number, will be available to the public as described on the posted agenda. As a courtesy, please turn off all cell phones. Let's move on to agenda item number 1, Bill 23, 2024, CD1, relating to gifts to the city officers and employees. We do have present from the Ethics Commission, Jan Yamane and Ms. Nowicki. Would either of you like to say a few words before we begin? Hello and welcome.
Aloha and good morning. Mahalo, Chair and members of the committee. My name is Lori Wong Nowinski, and I'm the Assistant Executive Director and Legal Counsel for the Honolulu Ethics Commission. May I take this opportunity to testify in support of Bill 23, CD1?
Thank you so much. Appreciate you folks being here and working hard on this bill. Thank you. Members, do you have any questions for the testifier? Seeing none, thank you so much.
If I may.
Yes, please.
If I may, Chair. I did want to clarify the intent of the bill. I understand that there were some questions from the public, and I wanted to clarify that the intent of the bill was to clarify and strengthen the city's gift law, and we firmly believe that it does so for the following reasons. First, it adds definitions into Section A, which were not already there. Second, it strengthens Section B, which I call the belt of the law. And it does this by mirroring the charter and the current law by prohibiting gifts if it appears that the gift is intended to reward or influence the city employee. But it also adds a provision to prohibit gifts if it appears that the gift is being used to curry favor or privilege. In addition, it adds Section C, which I call the suspenders of the law, in that it adds a prohibited source section. And this is a section that is common in other jurisdictions, including the federal United States Office of Government Ethics. And this makes a clear prohibition against gifts from certain prohibited sources that have a financial relationship with the city. The original definition of prohibited source included those who do business or seek to do business with the city. So that's where the language in that definition originated from. But the definition evolved over time into those with a financial relationship with the city, but also includes those who may receive income from third parties as a result of the financial relationship. And the reason why that language should remain inside this statute is that because it includes those in an agency sort of a relationship, including lobbyists, permit expediters, grant subrecipients, commercial developers, and rail contractors. In addition, Section C only provides exemptions as to the prohibited source provision in this law. And while there are a number of exemptions, a majority of these exemptions already appeared in the current version of the law, such as those regarding wills and trusts. And also, it codifies exemptions that have long been established for over the last 20 years in the Commission's guidelines on gifts, such as tokens of aloha. Most importantly, this law reduces the gift cap from $200 per year down to $50 per year per source. So in order to summarize, the analysis for this law adds an extra layer of protection, which I call the belt and suspenders approach, whereas the current version only has the belt. So first of all, we'd ask, number one, is it from a prohibited source? That helps to clarify it for city employees, and that will take out a lot of the questions. Second, if it is, if the answer is yes, if it is from a prohibited source, it's excluded. If not, the next question to ask in the analysis is, does it appear that the gift is intended to reward, influence, or secure extra privilege? So those are the belt and suspenders approach, as I like to call it. Anyway, thank you very much for entertaining my testimony on this matter. And again, the Commission is very thankful to the Council for their efforts in issuing this bill. Mahalo. I'm available for any questions.
Well, thank you very, very much for your hard work, as well as the Commission's hard work on this bill. Members, any follow-up questions? Seeing none, thank you again. Madam Clerk, do we have any other testifiers? Anybody registered to testify? Appears that
Chair,
Angela
there's a
Young.
telephone number.
Is Angela Young present?
Chair, no, she's not present.
Okay, thank you. We have a remote testifier with the last three digits 015. Is this person available?
Chair, it's Malia. Good morning, Chair. This is Malia Spinda. I'm sorry that I was unable to Zoom in or be there in person. I'm just listening in.
Okay, terrific. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Madam Clerk, do we have any other testifiers on the gift resolution?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you very much. Members, we're in discussion. Seeing none. The Chair recommends the Bill 23, 2024, CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Any objections or reservations? Noting none. So ordered. Thank you, members. I appreciate all your hard work, especially Vice Chair Kiaina for your hard work on this matter and for your promise to get it done before the fiscal year. So one more step to go. Thank you. One more step to go on third reading on June 5th. I'd like to welcome Councilmember Augie Tobo, who's joining us remotely. Hello, Councilmember Toba. perfect timing. Councilmember Tolba, in accordance with HRS Section 92-3.7, please identify each person you are with at your location.
About myself, Chair, I'll be listening in. Sorry, I'm on the road.
No problem. Thank you so much for joining us. Oh, is it your birthday today? Happy birthday.
Thanks, man. Appreciate that.
Awesome. Thank you. Okay,
Thank you.
members. What I'd like to do is take testimony and discussion on items 2 through 10 together as they all relate to amendments to the revised charter relating to the Salary Commission and salaries. Yeah. But just want to state for the record, we have agenda item number 2, resolution 24-105, initiating amendments to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu 1973, as amended in 2017, relating to salaries. Members, we have a posted to the agenda proposed CD1 version of the resolution, OCS 2024-0556/5/22/2024, 9:51 a.m. For your information, a summary of the amendments is listed on the agenda. Members, we also have a distributed hand-carried proposed CD1 version of the resolution OCS 2024-05/28/2024, time 2:33 p.m., submitted by Councilmember Tupola. Before we go into the explanation of each of these, I just want to read through this, and then we can come back to that. Also on the agenda, item number 3, resolution 23-193, initiating amendments to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu. Agenda item number 4, resolution 24-82, initiating amendments to the revised charter of the City and County of Honolulu. Agenda number 5, resolution 24-85, also initiating amendments to the revised charter. Agenda item number 6, resolution 24-86. Agenda item number 7, resolution 24-87. Agenda item number 8, resolution 24-91. Agenda item number 9, resolution 24-132. And agenda item number 10, resolution 24-133. Let's start with my CD1, members. I just want to explain it, then I'll turn the floor over to Councilmember Tupola to explain her CD1 as well. Members, on Resolution 24-105, the original draft included the following components. It established that the Salary Commission would meet biannually, odd number years, to establish the salaries of positions under their purview. As it pertains to council member salaries, establish a formula that would tie any raises for council members to the average of all collectively bargained raises for the city employees during that term, and remove the council's ability to vote on raises pertaining to the council. Based on the discussion in the first executive management meeting, the following amendments were incorporated into the CD1. Clarified that at least one public hearing must be held by the Salary Commission prior to submitting its salary recommendations. In response to concerns from the Salary Commission, we established a process by which the mayor could call the Salary Commission into session as needed between the charter-mandated biennial meetings. In response to comments from council members Tupola and the Salary Commission, we explicitly authorized the Salary Commission to set salaries over multiple years, provided future commissions retain the ability to amend recommendations that have extended beyond the biennium. From Kauai County Council Charter, explicitly authorized an appointing authority to set salaries below the salaries set by the Salary Commission for appointed officials and allow the elected officials, the mayor, prosecuting attorney, and the council, to reject all or part of their individual salaries. And taking from Councilmember Tupola's 24-082 and Councilmember Tolba's 24-085 and Councilmember Wyer's 24-091, establish a 10% cap for council members only to work in conjunction with the formula established in the original draft of the measure. Now I'd like to turn it over to Councilmember Tupola to explain her CD1.
Thanks so much, Chair. Thank you for weaving in so many different ideas. So specifically on the CD1 that I proposed, I incorporated the recent idea from Councilmember Tolba asking that the Salary Commission be selected by lottery from among the registered voters in each of the 9 council districts instead of being appointed by the mayor and council. I do believe that that would get us a better demographic slice of participants, and also it wouldn't have any type of tie or bias into ourselves or the mayor, which is something that we all were trying to find a line that we could, a bright line that we could draw. The second one was to allow a selected member to volunteer for a second term, but not thereafter. I do believe after some research that actually the charter does limit them, so we're probably good there. I did incorporate the idea from Councilmember Wyer, provide the Salary Commission may not increase the salaries for elected city officers by more than 3.5% from one fiscal year to the next. Remove the City Council from having a role in reviewing the salaries set by the Salary Commission, which is already what you have suggested. And then likewise, it amends this same in section 2, the same items. So I do think that your proposal to have some type of limitation on elected officials, to me, is in theory the same. So whether it's the 3.5 or it's a formula, I think that's what people want, and I'm in support of the things that you have suggested as well. So thank you.
No, thank you. And also thank all members for participating in this. I know a bunch of you did drafts, and I really appreciate the hard work and effort that you all put into this. Next, we're going on to remote testimony. Madam Clerk, do we have any testifiers remotely?
Chair, there are none.
Okay, do we have any in-person testifiers? Mr. Manaku? Hello, Mr. Manaku, welcome. Thank you for being here today.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. James K. Monaco, Senior, Concerned Parent, Grandparent, Great Grandparent. So we're looking at minimum wage. Is that what we're looking at? You guys go minimum wage? Too bad. You know, yeah, I like to see you folks getting your folks' salaries increased, but how about us? You know, the city is having a hard time. So it would be nice for you folks, you know, help us guys out and help fix up our community. You notice, you know, we're having a lot of problems in all of our districts, not just one district. If we had one district, would be nice. 2 districts would be nicer. 3 districts, you know. But in all 9 of our districts, we're having a lot of problems. So it would be nice for all of you council people if, you know, we give up a little money to help improve all 9 districts. Would be nice if you guys could do that for us. And since I get only 1 minute, and we're paying you guys salaries, I have to sit down. Thank you.
Thank you. Members, any questions for Mr. Manaku? Seeing none, thank you, sir. Any other testifiers, Madam Clerk?
Chair, we have a remote telephone.
Oh, wonderful. Salary Commission Chair, please proceed.
Good morning, Chair and members. Again, I apologize for not being there. My name is Malia Spinda. I am Chair of the Honolulu Salary Commission. I think this, I commend all of you. This is a good proposal going forward and it seems very collaborative in the verbiage that is being presented. I just do want to suggest that the membership of the commission was very informed, right? We have professionals that are former HR directors. We have 2 members that are private sector, high level in HR. And we have 2 state employees, 2 lawyers. I think the membership of this commission must be at a standard that considers what its responsibilities are. Thank you.
Thank you so much, and really appreciate you testifying today. Members, are there any questions
Thank you.
for the chair of the Salary Commission? Seeing none, thank you so much. I do note that we
Thank you.
also have another commission member, Rebecca Soon. Would you like to say a few words? And thank you for being here.
Aloha nui, good morning, Chair, members of the Commission, of the committee. Mahalo nui for continuing these discussions. Just kind of wanted to be here in case there were any questions that folks did want to have. I did want to sort of just briefly, if I could, offer 2 quick comments, just in renewal of what we talked about last month. First, just wanting to again encourage addressing the underlying issues that I think brought us to where we were last year, both as a commission as well as this council, in having to deal with such a large, long gap of delayed salaries. I think that the first thing that I had hoped that this committee would continue to support is indexing the salaries to some reasonable, regular level, which I think that Chair's Reso 24-105 accomplishes. So mahalo for hearing that. Secondly, just again want to sort of encourage somewhere addressing an affirmative statement that the position of city council member is expected to be full-time. Not preventing members from having flexible hours, that doesn't prevent members from being able to continue to serve on boards, volunteer, even having some level of outside employment. But it does make clear, I think, to future salary commissions, as well as to future candidates, that the kuleana that this position carries is not a 19-hour-a-week job, at least not for the 4 years that you all serve in it. So just wanted to offer those 2 sort of additional encouragement and comments. There is language that the Salary Commission did consider in my last month's testimony for what a potential proposed charter amendment might look like to make that affirmative statement with regards to full-time status. So just mahalo for continuing the discussion about how we really continue to serve our communities. Aloha.
Aloha, and thank you. Actually, members, do you have any questions for Ms. Soon? Seeing none. Ma'am, do you want to come testify? While you're making your way up to the podium, members, I thought about including the question of whether or not it's full-time or part-time in the charter. However, we can actually do that by ordinance. So I thought we could do that instead of putting in the charter. I didn't want to further complicate the charter question because already as it exists, there's multiple questions on there. But aloha, welcome. Please proceed.
Good morning. Good morning, Chair. Good morning, City Council. I'd just like to make a quick statement. I was not going to testify on this instance. When the people hear the word full-time, they think 40 hours a week. You may have issues if you put that word, and I'm glad you said not in a charter, but in an ordinance. The reason being is because I believe that the general public understands, as well as all of you, and on the state level, that when you become a public servant, you're a public servant. There is no hours accounted with it. As long as you're in office, you're serving. Yes, you have a life. Completely agree with that. But I think when we start boxing in things, full-time, part-time, that kind of words, now you put a thought in the people's head, oh, you have to work this many hours or you cannot work this many hours. You're going to have problems with that. I think maybe a better solution would be a definition of what the public servant is. Public servant is basically you are serving the people as long as you sit in that seat. Now, with the understanding that you also have a personal life and outside jobs, as several of you do. So I would like to put that in record, that I don't think people want to hear full-time or part-time, because that's where you folks get attacked. You folks get attacked by the public, and I will say I address that as well, because now I'm saying, well, you're a part-time. This is not a career move for you. You are here in 2 terms, and then you move on, and whether you want to continue in the political realm. So I would ask, as one of the people, to keep those 2 words out, full-time, part-time, and just say that you're a public servant and define that. Thank you.
Well, thank you. Really appreciate your testimony. Members, any questions for your testifier? No, seeing none, thank you. Do we have any other testifiers, Madam Clerk?
Chair, there are none.
Thank you so much. That brings us to discussion, members. I'd like to start by talking about within my CD1, I put in a cap of 10% and the formula. Basically, I took the cap of 10% from Resolution 24-085 introduced by Councilmember Tolba. But I'm open. I know that Councilmember Tupola initially had a cap of 5%, and Councilmember Wire initially had a cap of 3.5%. Any discussion with regard to a cap? Councilmember Kia Aina.
Chair, I just wanted to understand the process today. Are you going to have each member discuss all, or are we going to stop and consider yours and Councilmember Tupola's amendments?
Well, great question. Great question. I'd prefer to start with my CD as perhaps the vehicle that we'll be using. Why don't we start with that?
Sure.
And maybe we do this rather than, I'll just open it up. If anybody has any concerns or questions about the CD that I'm proposing, then we can address that. So, Councilmember Kia Aina.
Thank you, Chair. First of all, let me thank all of the council members who have put forth proposal, yourself, Councilmember Okimoto, Toba, Tupola, and Wire. I agree that changes to the way salaries are approved for council members is needed, and currently there are 9 proposed charter amendments with regard to the commission that we are discussing today. I have shared concerns of overwhelming or confusing voters with putting forth various questions, so I'm hoping that we collectively can narrow down the questions that we believe are represent most of our thoughts. So in viewing the proposal, I do support your CD1 to Resolution 24-05. I support the Salary Commission meeting biannually. I prohibit the council from voting on their own salaries. And with regard to the caps, that's the only thing that I differ with. While I know that both yourself and Councilmember put that 10% cap, I didn't mean it. I thought it actually meant biannually. So for me, I would support, others have put 3.5%. I'm open to 3.5% to 5% annually. I think 10% per year is too much. When I saw this initially, I thought you meant 10% biannually. In other words, you'd be making up for the other year that you had lost, and then that would get you to 5%. With regard to the composition of the commission, I am actually still open to revisiting that. I just believe that as currently crafted, including with the lottery system, it's not well vetted. In other words, you need to have some qualifications. And I think that that should either be considered when we go to full council, so we could develop that more, or as we consider the Charter Commission. And then lastly, I appreciate the comments made by the testifiers in the audience today on part-time, full-time. I do note that that is a difficult issue to tackle, so I would defer to you on that with regard to via an ordinance. I will say this, when we had a robust discussion on this in the Kailua Neighborhood Board, they were entertaining a resolution against the salaries. I was there not to talk about the resolution. I was simply there to tell them that I was not part-time. And the reason being, the Kailua Neighborhood Board is on a Thursday, and I max out not at 19, but 20 hours, close of business Thursday. So I had shared with the neighborhood board, I would not be able to attend the Kaneohe, Kailua, and Kahalu neighborhood boards because they fall on Wednesdays and Thursdays. The only neighborhood board in my district that falls on a Monday would be the Waimanalo Neighborhood Board. So points will take in both for the commissioner as well as the testifier that maybe there's an innovative way of looking at it without actually having to say whether it's part-time or full-time. I know for myself that, you know, I would meet the public servant comment because I don't, if something's urgent, I don't stop. You know, it's 24/7. Thank you.
Thank you. Appreciate your testimony. Members, any further discussion? Council Member Cordero, followed by Tupola.
Thank you, Chair. Thank you to all the council members who have diligently worked on amendments to the charter relating to the salary and salary commission. First off, I really didn't know where I would land on this. Now that I'm visiting my neighbors again, going door to door, a lot of the comments have been, first off, all my neighborhood boards never rejected the raise. All my neighborhood boards want me to take the raise, and people at the door do recommend I take the raise as well. But when I talked to them about us fixing this, they didn't really see where a lot of the issues lay, besides, I guess, knowing when and where they would be able to provide that comment. And I think that's the Salary Commission was already equipped for that, whether they did it or not, or whether they, approached us during the discussions last year. But what a lot of the, when I did share a bit of the proposals, some of their feedback was they liked Councilmember Tolba's 10% cap. I shared that I did think that it was a little too big, but that was kind of the consensus when I was going door to door. I asked if they thought that 10% per year or biannually. They said per year is fine, but for me, I do think biannually and 10%, so 5.5 each year. I know that that does kind of go against a lot about what they're saying, but it kind of is a happy medium in my sense. But so either, if we go with the 10%, I know my community that I've been visiting will support that. As for the cap on elected officials, I think I've shared this before that they said that their way of deciding whether we're doing a good job or not is whether they vote for us or not. They said that they didn't see a cap needed for the elected officials as well, but they said how will they, who controls or gives the performance metrics for the directors. So my community is interesting in a sense where it's kind of going against the grain a little bit, but I highlight that because a lot of the times there's a lot of people who aren't saying these things, whether it be in letter to the editors or through emails, but through these discussions when you're at their door, right? So I bring that up just because, once again, we're not always hearing the different sentiments that people have. But with that, I do support the 10% that Councilmember Tolba provided in his 85. And with that, I'll support Chair's CD1. Thanks.
Thank you very much. Councilmember Tupola.
Thank you so much, Chair. Yeah, I think I'm going to make some comments on yours. So first off, for the setting adjustments to council member salary by formula, I guess when I had proposed my CD and I took Councilmember Wire's 3.5, I guess I was thinking more of how do we become, or how do we state it more clearly? My main concern is I don't want the ballot question to be so complex because this has 4 parts to it. So I thought instead of saying collective bargaining, average this, like we could possibly come to a percentage where it's just be clear to the voters, okay, this is what we're saying. So along the same lines as both the previous speakers, I would be, obviously, I propose the 5%, so I'm okay with the 5%, and I think that's reasonable. I do agree that maybe 3.5 is too low, but I think 5% every year is something that is palatable for the public. I will say that my neighborhood boards did reject, the salary raise or put forward resolutions to do that. But nonetheless, I think any suggestion on capping it over the years may take out the need for number 3. So as I read number 3, when we first talked about like allowing the salary commission to set it over years, we were talking about the need, if they had a high number, to split that high number over multiple years. So I think I want you to maybe take into consideration that if we put in number 1, no matter what we put it in, whether or not we need number 3, because if we're basically bringing it down to something reasonable every year, then we shouldn't have to split it over multiple years. And that way we can simplify the ballot question. The next one is limiting the salary commission to establishing salaries once every 2 fiscal years, but providing the mayor with flexibility to request the commission set the salaries more frequently. I almost feel like the first and second sentence just equal meet every year, because it's like he can, but then you can do 2. I want to say that based upon all of these guardrails we're putting in, I want to say having them meet every year should be fine. And then maybe we can leave that out of the question so that it's just focused on the percentage. Then lastly, when it says permitting the mayor or board that appoints an appointed officer to reduce the salary for the appointed officer below the salary set by the salary commission, I kind of think it's a little too intricate. And I guess my question was on the last part when it says that officials can decline all or part of their own salary. I want to say per the law, everyone can do that who's elected. So we might not need to put that in the question. But anyways, my overall sentiment is yes on some type of cap. I also think that if there is a possibility for us to try to massage the whole how we choose the commissioners, that was the only other thing that a lot of people brought up, is how is this fair that most of the people who are chosen are friends of the mayor or friends of the council. But to be honest, that's kind of how, a lot of commissioners are recommended. It's because we know them, we know their background, we know that they're credible people. So if there is a way for us to massage, and maybe it's not the lottery, maybe it's a lottery with qualifications or something, and if that can sort of be a short part of number 1, then we might have a shorter question to ask just about the cap, us not having the authority, and a possible, I don't know what the word would be, not arbitrary, but a possible, I'd have to think of the word, something that equals like fair and unbiased commission choice selection, unbiased commission selection, something like that. And then we could kind of work out what the details are on how we're going to try to make it a little bit more unbiased. But that's it. So thank you, Chair, for all your work on trying to weave all of these things together. And mahalo nui to everyone for their comments.
No, thank you very much, and thank you for your hard work as well. Just to address some of the concerns that you have, looking at the actual CD1, we're looking at page 3, number 1, and then subsections 1, 2, 3, and 4. So are you suggesting, and by the way, I did take number 3 and added it on based on our discussion last time. So are you okay with me deleting that? I kind of like the idea of streamlining the question so that it's as easy as possible for the electorate.
I think because we are all settled on a form of number 1, meaning be it resolved 1-1, right? Whatever we come out with, I think that will resolve it. That will not need us to split this over multiple years. And so, yes, I think we should take it out and simplify this question so that it's real clear to the public.
Okay, wonderful. Is everybody in agreement with that? Yeah. Okay, thank you. And then number 4, permitting the mayor or board to reduce the salaries. Again, this came out of Kauai's charter. That's why I included it. I thought it might be a good idea, but I'm actually okay with reducing that as well and taking out number 4, because as Councilmember Tupola pointed out, we have the ability to reject the salaries as I think a number of us have done this year. So any discussion on that, taking out number 4? Seeing none, okay. Oh, I'm sorry, Councilmember Tolba. You had a question, Please proceed.
Thank you, Chair. No, just comments. I'm sorry. I'm on the road. I just wanted to again say thank you to everyone. I think the main issue that came up with the public is that they're upset with the salary commission proposed one-time immediate 64% raise. So if we just put the simple question to address that this year, such as a 10% cap, this is a clear statement to the public that the large raise won't happen again for council members. That's all I wanted to make. And again, thank you to everyone. I value everyone's work. Aloha.
No, thank you. I appreciate your hard work as well. I know you've introduced a number of these resolutions today. But is there any further discussion on whether or not we should include subsection 4, permitting the mayor or board that appoints to reduce the salaries as it is in the Kauai Charter? Again, I included this based on our discussion the last time. There seemed to be support for that, but I kind of like the idea of streamlining the question to make it as simple as possible, as Councilmember Tolba pointed out and Councilmember Tupola. Any objection to me taking out subsection 4? Seeing none, okay, let's do that. By the way, the cap is sort of like a backstop in my mind. And let's be flexible and have a discussion of what that should be. But if their formula is there, as Commissioner Sun pointed out, that should take care of the problem, right? It's pretty much formulaic, it's predictable, but the cap is just a backstop, just in case something happens in 1 year where the collective bargaining is really high, we'd be capped. It doesn't go over a certain amount. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you, Chair. So does that mean we're going to have both proposals on it as well? Meaning the formula, and if it exceeds that, then the cap is the cap.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. But the question is, so we're kind of all on a different page. I note that Councilmember Tupola is okay with 5%. We started with Councilmember Tolba's at 10%. Councilmember Kiaina is anywhere between 3.5 and 5%. It looks like we're kind of landing on, and Councilmember Cordero is between 5 and 10%. But any further discussion on that? Councilmember Say.
Yeah, Mr. Chair, my concern, and I'm sorry I didn't share with the council members earlier. I don't believe the system is broken. It's just that our predecessors did not want to approve their pay raises. And that's a fair assumption to make. So now we're going to go through this exercise, which is fine. We're questioning the board, we're questioning the composition of the commission. I thought it was fine. It's just that if we're going to do a major city charter amendment on salary commission, I agree with all the members, it should be just very, very simple. Don't add all these add-ons, caps, leave it to the commission. Well, why hire the commission? They're the salary commission. Formula? What am I signing off in the city charter amendment for a formula? What is the formula today? Well, what will the formula be on November on ballot? Don't get me wrong. If we have to do something in the optics of what the public wants, fine. But don't tie the hands of our future council members. So when I look at the proposals, I would have loved to have, Chair, each of these proposals having been defended by the sponsors. Why this change? Why that change? It makes it easier for the public out there to understand. Now we're talking about the caps. What is a cap? It's nothing. It's something that's artificially talking about right now, 10%. Is it tied to collective bargaining? Is it tied to the CPI? Is it tied to everything that people can add into it? All I'm saying is that I personally feel we do have a very good system in place. And I apologize to you folks if you feel differently, because it is my predecessors who rejected the pay raises for the past almost, what, 2 decades? Close to 20 years? That's all I'm saying. And what we have last year was basically a catch-up as far as what should be a reasonable salary for a city council member that represents 110,000 in population. And that's where I'm coming from. But if we have to do an amendment, charter amendment, I'll be open to it. But let's make it simple for the general public to understand what we're adopting. Thank you.
No, thank you. I really appreciate your comments. Looking at the current charter, the charter reads that the commission shall set salaries in accordance with principles of adequate compensation for work performed and preservation of a sensible relationship with the salaries of other city employees, which I believe they did. And they backed that up with their findings of facts and the study that they provided as well. But as you know, the public was very concerned and upset perhaps about the one-time salary adjustment. And I think that's why we're acting on this now. But I just want to point out that the formula means that if the city employees don't get a raise, we don't get a raise. Simple as that. And I think people would appreciate that. And that's why I presuming that are putting in the formula. And it's more predictable, I think. And it's, again, I'm just trying to be fair with what every other city employee makes. Yeah, and it kind of comports with what this says, a sensible relationship with the salaries of other city employees. And the fact of the matter is that the Salary Commission actually did do the one-time catch-up. So going forward, I'm not sure we're going to have to deal with the same problem. But that's the idea, that we are doing something. We're putting it to the voters to decide. But your points are well taken. Councilmember Say, I think you have a
just to follow
further
up,
comment.
it's just a food for thought, which I shared with my staff. Great to have 6 figures. But we talked about it the past 3 years now. For those city employees who only make 5 figures at a percentage, that's where I disagree when I say collective bargaining based on a percentage, based on your base salary. No matter what, the discrepancy is going to get greater and greater in the future because we make 6 figures. I'm thinking about the rank and file. Why not just go a dollar amount as a pay raise for council members versus a percentage tied to collective bargaining? What about the person at the bottom? We're going to have a bigger differential in our pay, the dollar amount I'm talking about. That's where, yes, qualifications, experience, everything plays a big part, responsibilities. But I'm also looking at the rank and file today that need a lot of more support than we today. So my point once more, if we're going to do something, maybe the idea would be a dollar amount rather than a percentage tied to collective bargaining. Calvin say making 100,000, 5%, that's 5,000. A young lady at DPP or DPR secretary making 50,000 at 5%, 2,500. Where's the fairness? Where's the equity? Is it because she's a secretary or a park ranger or a park keeper? That's not the point for me. The point for me is that these people are also human beings. And that's where we're losing sight. Corporate America is losing sight of that. Government is losing sight of that. And that's where we're fumbling along in trying to determine salary increases for shortage categories, categories that we don't have enough workers. That's the concern, Mr. Chair. I'm just trying to look at the optics and say, what is fair? Maybe a dollar amount tied to what we have right now. The base is 116,000. a dollar amount tied to collective bargaining will not go, but maybe somebody at the lower end of the totem pole, the salary, that percentage increase. It's just food for thought, okay? But I can understand we have something that we have to do, which I'm very much open, like I shared with you. But I share this because I'm looking at the rank and file also. Thank you.
No, I appreciate your comments. It would have been extremely helpful had you put that in writing in a proposed CD1. But having said that, I do think it's fair to tie our any increase in salaries to what every other worker gets. And to me, that is fair. Like I mentioned, if a public worker doesn't get a raise, we don't get a raise. Moving on to Councilmember Kiaina had a comment.
Thank you, Chair. I'm actually open to Councilmember Tupola's comments relating to the streamlining of the questions as opposed to 3. Because, again, I know that I still have a problem with all of the charter questions, even as I'm here sometimes, you know. It was worse when I wasn't here. But because since we have the cap, since it looks like we are coming to 5% annually, then there's no reason to perhaps do it biannually. And so I am open to just having 2 questions, but my only comment for the second question would be making sure that the percentage cap is in it, because that's exactly what voters have said. The people have said they want to see a cap. So let's just state it out from the outset, right? So that they know what they're voting for, make it very clear. So those are my 2 comments. Number 1, I'm open to making it annual if we agree about the 5% cap. And then in the second question, let's state it so that the voters know what they're voting on.
No, thank you. I appreciate your comments. So based on the earlier discussion, I've already excluded question number 3 and 4. Are you now suggesting that we also delete number 2? I'm looking on page 3. So we would only have the page, excuse me, that one question, which deals with the cap, deals with the formula, and deals with the voting. I mean, I'm okay with that as well, members, if you all are. Yeah, so number 2 says limiting the salary commission to establishing salaries once every 2 years, but providing the mayor with the flexibility to request the commission to set aside salaries more frequently when necessary. So, I mean, you all are making very good arguments that why we don't need this once you have the formula. Yeah, Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, Chair, I think in what you're saying that makes sense that we might be able to limit or eliminate number 2, because if they are meeting annually and if we have a formula, then there is no need for catch up. And I think if we do the biannual, that's where we're going to fall into the, man, we need to catch up, they need more percentage. So I think we're handling all of it if we just keep it annually and not set them to be biannual, or that the mayor can call them and then it becomes annual again, even though it already was annual. Then we would just be set with question number 1, and then we would have to just come up with the backstop. I love that analogy though, because it's the catch. Because if no one gets raises, we don't get raises. So we just got to determine what we think the backstop should be, if it's 5 or 10%. But I'm in favor of just keeping them at meeting annually if we've put these safeguards in.
Thank you. Very good points. Councilmember Cordero.
Thank you. At first, when we had all these proposals, I was supportive of the biannually. But after this discussion, meeting with my community, the annual, removing number 2 and then keeping it annual is fine with me.
Thank you. You want to weigh in on this, Councilmember Wire?
Sure. And first, along the lines of Councilmember Say's comments, I do think a part of the larger conversation is just the need to better compensate our city workforce, and appreciate the Salary Commission's conversations, including that, and just looking at across the board what our public servants are making, that are making, much less and working at, say, parks or other departments and working really hard. and kind of what was mentioned earlier, the intention of the 3.5% cap was based on just trying to fall within the range of what collective bargaining typically would allow, or the maximum it would go for, you know. And so I actually really appreciate the idea of, you know, that having a formula and then acknowledging that in years that there aren't increases for city employees, council members wouldn't get increases as well. I don't know if that could be even added to the provided for portion of question number 1, and after the percent cap, just so folks can kind of understand where we're going with. Totally support getting rid of 2 through 4, the questions 2 through 4, that it seems like chair's already inclined to do. And if it's annual, and we're coming from the mindset of the formula and we're going to include a cap, I know there's been discussion about whether or not it's needed if there's a formula. I think the 5 or the 3.5 cap is relatively safe in the context of both what collective bargaining can afford or has historically afforded, and also what would keep up with just, you know, as time progresses and cost of living progresses. Thank you, Chair.
I appreciate your comments and your hard work on this as well. Okay, I think we're basically in agreement then to delete number 2 as well. So all we're left is with the one question. It's pretty streamlined. And the last thing that we need to decide on is, well, 2 other things, but one is the percentage. Would members consider a compromise of 6%? No? I see Councilmember Kiaina saying no. Councilmember Say chomping at the bit. Councilmember Say, please
Mr. Chair,
proceed.
I'm chuckling primarily because are we setting a precedent by setting a 6% cap? Meaning, when our public employee unions go and negotiate collective bargaining, that becomes the floor. Does that become the floor as part of the negotiations? Why no? See?
You would, I agree, yes, that would become the floor. But in the event that it's much higher, which, by the way, I think we all have been advocating for higher salaries for our public employees.
Yes.
I really am. But if this year, say our public employees were to get 10%, we wouldn't get 10%. It would be capped, right? Because, you know, I think after the one-time catch-up, that's fair to cap it. But the real question is just what are we going to cap it at this point?
What has been the means during the past decade? What I'm saying for collective bargaining for our city employees. What has been the average for the past 10 years? I don't know, but I just bring this up for discussion purposes.
Yeah.
But I'll go with your recommendation and your decision, Chair.
Do you have a recommendation? Well, I guess you just stated it. Thank you. Councilmember Tupola?
Yeah, I wanted to just share to your question. So the UPW workers just negotiated last year, and I think they ended with a 3.72, and that was in October last year. And then 6 months later, so what they did is they preset it. It was 3.72 in October, and then come July the next year, it was a 5%, and then the July the following year was 5%. So I guess just to be clear, most of our collective bargaining units are doing a couple years. It depends on how long of a contract they're trying to renegotiate. So what they'll do is they'll set the 3.5 this year, 5% the next year. So we're talking about annually. We're not doing multiple year contracts. So I think that annually, I've not seen most unions go over 5%. I'm just saying. So I think we're actually, with the formula, probably going to keep ourselves around there. And I think 6% would be like kind of on the extreme side, because we probably would always stay between 3 and 5 if we're going to tie ourselves to a formula. So just wanted to share.
No, I appreciate that very much, and I agree. And based on what you just said, I'm going to suggest 5%. Councilmember Cordero.
I agree. I know I'm going against my community who said 10%, but I did state that I support the 5%. Thank you.
Thank you. So members, 5%, unless I hear an objection? Okay, let's change on page 3, subsection 1, instead of 10% to 5%. The only last thing I wanted to discuss, members, was Councilmember Tolba's idea of creating a lottery to select the members of the council. You know, I spent a lot of time thinking about how we could do it differently and or better. And this issue is very complicated. And you know, keeping in line with what we talked about earlier of trying to streamline this question and keep it as tight as possible and easiest to understand, I'd like to defer that question to the Charter Commission, which is going to be coming up next year, because again, it is really complicated. And I'd like to thank Councilmember Tolba for coming up with this idea. But I think that one question merits so much more discussion than we have time to put in today. Councilmember Tupola.
Yeah, Chair, I'm going to agree with you. I think because of what we just discussed, we almost solved the majority of the concerns that we had just by doing this, right? Making it fair, tying it to collective bargaining, make it annual. So my suggestion, if it goes, you know, is discussed at the Charter Commission instead of the lottery, is to do it the same way we do the reapportionment committee, which is instead of the chair or the mayor suggesting, we just all choose someone from our district that we think has the right qualifications to weigh in. But, you know, that I think can be handled at the Charter Commission or when they redo the charter on those discussions. But I'm totally in favor of withdrawing this as part of this discussion for the ease of the charter ballot question, or being simpler for the community to understand.
Thank you so much. Any further discussion, members? Councilmember Cordero.
My community did not think that there was an issue with how we chose them before. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. So members, at this point then, well, is there any other comments that folks want to make before I make our recommendation? Okay, thank you. So what I'm recommending is that we pass out the CD1 on Resolution 24-105 on page 3, deleting numbers 2, 3, and 4 on the bottom of page 3. In subsection 1, changing the 10% to 5%. And then if OCS can amend the rest of the resolution to comport with what I just said. To make conforming edits. Any discussion, members? Seeing none. The resolution has been amended to CD1 with the suggested amendments. Chair then recommends that Resolution 24-105 CD1 be reported out for passage on third reading. Any discussion? Seeing none, any objections or reservations? Noting no objections or reservations, so ordered. Thank you very much, members, for all your hard work. We have one last item on our agenda. Oh, I've been told that I need to postpone all other measures. And yeah, can I just say it like that? Postpone all other measures, or do I have to go through one at a time?
Yeah, sorry, you have to just one at a time.
Okay. So members, we are postponing agenda item number 3, resolution 23-193, agenda item number 4, resolution 24-82, resolution number, item number 5, resolution 24-85, agenda item number 6, resolution 24-86, agenda item number 7, resolution 24-87, agenda item number 8, resolution 24-91, and agenda item number 9, resolution 24-132, And agenda item number 10, resolution 24-133. Thank you, members.
Mr. Chair,
Yes, Councilmember Say.
could you explain to the general public what postponement means? Because you have incorporated most of the amendments in the original draft that you have proposed.
Yeah, gladly. Thank you so much. So for those watching, what we did was I tried to incorporate ideas from each of the other resolutions that we just postponed into one vehicle, resolution 24-105, CD1. Therefore, rather than confusing the public and having all these questions on the ballot, we decided to just go with one. And therefore, the rest are postponed indefinitely. Yeah. Okay. Terrific. Next, members, moving to Resolution 24-139. 24-139, approving the proposed budget for the Hawaii State Association of Counties for the fiscal year 24-25. Madam Clerk, do we have any testifiers?
Chair, there are none.
Okay. Seeing no testifiers, we're in discussion.
Mr. Chair?
Councilmember Say.
Yep, strong support. Yep, and I hope that the 4 counties will be prepared next year when we go to the state legislature to see if we can have some reversals of some of the measures that were adopted this year and signed into law. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further discussion, members? Seeing none, the chair recommends Resolution 24-139 reported out for adoption. Any further discussion? Seeing none, any objections or reservations? Noting none, so ordered. Members, thank you so much. This has been a really, really good exercise and a good discussion. I appreciate all of your hard work. There being no further business, the meeting is adjourned.